What's a memory from your childhood you thought was innocent, but later came back to haunt you? My dad used to take me on these amazing adventure drives every Saturday morning. I'd wake up to the smell of coffee brewing and find him already dressed, keys jingling in his hand with that familiar, mischievous grin. "Ready for another expedition, princess?" he'd ask, and my heart would leap with excitement. We'd pack snacks together in the kitchen. Peanut butter crackers, juice boxes, maybe some of those little cheese cubes I loved. Mom would still be in her bathrobe, sipping coffee and watching us with a sleepy smile. "You two have fun on your house hunting adventure," she'd say, ruffling my hair. I felt so important, so grown up being included in this serious adult decision about finding our dream home. Dad would drive slowly through different neighborhoods, the radio playing softly as he pointed out architectural details I didn't understand, but nodded along to anyway. "See how that roof slopes, honey? That's called a dormer," he'd explain, his voice patient and teaching. He'd cruise past beautiful houses with manicured lawns, asking what I thought about each one. "That one's perfect, Daddy," I'd exclaim about some sprawling mansion with white columns. "We could have tea parties on that big porch." He'd chuckle and pull over, parking across the street. We'd sit there for 10 minutes while I pressed my face to the window, spinning elaborate fantasies about decorating my room, where we'd put the Christmas tree. Sometimes he'd take pictures of me pointing excitedly at the houses, encouraging me to pose and smile. "One day we'll look back at these and remember when we first found our dream house," he'd say, snapping photo after photo. I'd giggle and strike different poses, feeling like a model. Other times, our drives would take us past elementary schools during weekend sports games. Dad would park near the chain link fences, watching intently as kids ran around soccer fields. The sounds of whistles blowing, parents cheering, and children laughing would drift through our open windows. The drives always ended the same way, though. Somewhere between our last stop and pulling into our driveway, Dad would get really quiet and sad-looking. His hands would grip the steering wheel tighter, and I'd notice his jaw clenching in that way that meant he was thinking hard about something troubling. When I'd ask what was wrong, he'd turn to face me, his eyes suddenly bright with unshed tears. "Nothing, baby. Daddy just loves you so much," he'd say, pulling me into one of his fierce hugs that made me feel like the most precious thing in the world. Then we'd drive home in comfortable silence, and he'd tell Mom we drove around looking at different neighborhoods, getting a feel for the market. She'd nod approvingly while I ran off to play, already looking forward to next Saturday's adventure. Now that I'm 28 and have been through years of therapy, I realize with crystal clarity what those drives actually were. Dad wasn't house hunting for our family's future. He was methodically casing neighborhoods, studying security systems, noting which houses looked unoccupied during certain hours, planning break-ins for later that week. The schools weren't about my future activities. He was watching foot traffic patterns, observing when parents would be distracted. Those weren't innocent father-daughter adventure drives. They were calculated reconnaissance missions, and I was his perfect unknowing cover. Who would ever suspect a doting man with his adorable, chattering daughter of planning burglaries? When I'd enthusiastically point at houses and he'd take pictures, I was unknowingly helping him document potential targets and escape routes. The worst part? When I finally confronted him years later during one of his brief periods out of prison, he broke down crying like a child. "You were so happy on those drives," he said, his voice cracking with genuine anguish. I kept telling myself I was spending quality time with my little girl, that maybe I wasn't such a terrible father after all. My innocent joy had been his absolution. I still can't drive through nice neighborhoods without feeling sick.